evening light pooled through the glass roof in slow gold ribbons. Below the panes the town lay quiet, its roofs dim and soft, its streets already given over to sleep. In the vast attic greenhouse the air held the mild scent of damp earth and dry husks. Lina moved among the floating seed pods with unhurried steps. They drifted at shoulder height, pale and round, turning now and then with the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air. Her hands worked gently along the frayed edges of discarded maps spread across a low table. She smoothed a torn border, pressed a thin strip of paper into place, and let the paste set while the light shifted. One half-finished sheet caught her eye. Its coastlines wandered without quite meeting, as if the map had paused halfway through a thought. She lifted it carefully, felt the unfinished lines under her fingertips, and set it aside on a clear corner of the table. Then she turned to the trays. Theo joined her without a word. Together they tidied the shallow wooden trays that held scraps of paper, soft brushes, and tiny weights of smooth stone. They stacked what needed stacking and brushed away the fine dust of old ink. The work asked nothing more than patience. When Lina returned to the half-finished map, she paused. A river that had run one way before now curved in another direction entirely. It bent toward a blank stretch of parchment, a place no cartographer had marked with name or symbol. The ink looked dry and settled, as though it had always belonged there. Theo watched her quiet study. From a scrap of pale paper he folded a small boat, creasing each side with careful fingers until the little craft sat neatly in his palm. He set it beside the open map where the new river gleamed faintly in the evening light. They sat without hurry on the low bench near the table. Around them the greenhouse breathed in the soft way of glass and growing things, the slow drift of warmth, the occasional turn of a pod, the hush that gathers when day has nearly finished. Lina rested one hand near the redrawn river. Theo held the paper boat lightly between his thumbs. Neither spoke for a long while. The seed pods continued their gentle turning overhead. Below the glass the town remained still. They rested beside the open map, wondering why its rivers rearrange whenever no one is watching. Time passed in the quiet way that evening becomes night. The last of the warm light thinned and cooled until a pale moon rose beyond the glass. Its silver washed across the panes and laid soft lines over the table, the open map, and the little paper boat still resting near Lina's hand. They kept their gentle watch without speaking. Theo's eyes drifted now and then toward the ceiling where the pods turned slowly in the still air. Lina kept her gaze on the half-finished sheet, noticing how the moonlight made every faint line seem ready to change. The greenhouse smelled of damp earth and quiet green leaves. Nothing hurried. After a long stretch of stillness, a thin gleam began to move across the paper. Fresh ink gathered of its own accord, dark and sure, and drew a narrow river that curved away from the earlier one. It ran gently toward the far end of the attic, as if pointing the way to the greenhouse door. Lina touched the edge of the sheet with careful fingers. Theo leaned closer. The new river shone under the moon, settled and calm, as though it had always meant to be there. They rose together and lifted the map between them, holding it open so the lines stayed clear. Following the river's quiet suggestion, they walked the attic's length. Their steps were soft on the worn boards. Warmth from the day's sun still lingered underfoot, fading as they moved. Overhead, seed pods drifted and turned with the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air. The paper boat remained behind on the table, small and patient in the moonlight. At the far wall they came to a window they had always known as sealed. Its frame was dark wood, its latch plain and unused. Yet as they stood with the map held between them, the window eased open of its own slow will. Cool air drifted in, clean and mild. Beyond the sill a passageway waited, soft with hanging vines and the hush of still air. A few seed pods floated past the open frame, turning once more before they drifted into the corridor's gentle dark. Lina and Theo paused at the threshold. The map felt warm in their hands. One soft path stretched ahead of them, still unnamed, inviting only the quietest next step. They stepped through the open frame together, keeping the map steady between them. The air of the corridor rested cool on their skin. It smelled faintly of leaves and old wood. Vines hung from the ceiling and along the walls without stirring, their leaves soft and pale in the dimness. Through narrow gaps below, the distant lights of the sleeping town scattered like coins left quiet on a dark cloth. Lina and Theo moved slowly along the soft path. Their shoulders brushed the hanging vines now and then, and the vines only swayed a little before hanging still again. The boards underfoot felt smooth and cool, worn by years of quiet air. Fallen seed pods rested here and there along the edges of the corridor. Some had come to rest against the base of the vines where the light grew thinner. Lina knelt and gathered a handful into her open palms. Each pod rattled with the sound of tiny dried leaves inside when she turned it gently. Theo gathered others nearby, choosing the ones that felt light and dry and cupping them so none would spill. They walked a little farther until they found a wider stretch of the passageway. A low ledge ran along the wall there, broad enough for the map. A shallow tray of water sat on it, left from some earlier day, its surface smooth and clear and faintly reflecting the pale vines. Together they spread the half-finished map upon the ledge. The paper wanted to curl at the corners, the way unfinished maps sometimes do when the air is cool. One by one they set the gathered seed pods down to weight each corner. First the upper left, then the upper right. Then the lower corners followed in the same unhurried way. With each careful placement came the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air, soft and brief, answering their hands. Theo leaned closer to the newest river. He saw that it had deepened its curve while they worked. The ink had settled darker and fuller as the line bent toward the shallow tray of water on the ledge. It seemed to reach for that quiet pool without quite touching it yet. Lina smoothed the center of the map with one palm. The paper lay flat now, quiet under its 4-pod weights. The rivers and coastlines held steady in the cool air of the corridor. Yet the newest curve still felt unfinished, as though it waited for one more gentle turn before it could rest. As they watched, a thin place in the paper began to lift along the newest path. Where the ink had thinned, a small tear opened, soft as a breath across dry leaves. The edges curled a little, pale and uncertain, as if the river might blur into the white space before it could settle into its true line. Lina touched the tear with one fingertip. The paper felt delicate there, worn thin by the moving ink. She turned toward the hanging vines and the quiet moss that grew along the corridor stones in soft green cushions. She gathered a small tuft between her fingers. It was cool and faintly damp, the color of evening leaves after rain. From it she spun a fine thread, rolling the fibers slowly against her palm until they became a slender green line. A faint green smell rose as she worked, clean and gentle, like moss under old glass. Theo watched for a moment, then took a scrap of paper from his pocket. He folded it with careful creases into a small boat, the kind he always made when the evening grew still. He carried it to the shallow tray on the ledge and set it floating on the quiet water. The boat drifted a short way, then rested, a calm guide for the river's unfinished curve. Lina threaded her needle with the moss thread. She began to stitch along the tear with patient, even pulls. Each stitch drew the edges together without hurry. The paper softened under her hands and slowly began to hold. While she worked, Theo stayed near the tray, watching the little boat. Now and then he adjusted its place so it pointed gently toward the map's newest line. The air in the corridor shifted once, very softly. From the corners of the map came the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air. The weights held steady. The older rivers stayed quiet in their beds. Lina continued her slow stitches. The moss thread sank into the paper like a whisper of green. The tear grew smaller with each quiet pull. The faint green smell lingered around their hands and mingled with the cool breath of the passageway. They worked without speaking much. The cool air rested on their shoulders. Below the corridor, the town lights glowed faint and far, scattered like coins on dark cloth. Theo folded another tiny crease into the boat's sail so it would catch no wind it did not need. Lina paused to smooth the mended edge with her thumb. Under the 4 seed pod weights the fabric of the map began to hold again, firmer now, less inclined to curl. The tear was nearly closed. One last stitch waited on her needle. The newest river still curved toward the tray, unfinished and quiet. The map had not yet shown why it chose these routes. Lina drew the last stitch tight. The moss thread settled into the paper and lay still. A faint warm light rose from the map, soft as the glow left on skin after holding a cup of tea. Every path grew clear beneath their eyes. The older rivers stayed quiet in their beds. The newest one, still curved toward the tray, softened its edge and joined them without hurry. Lines that had once looked unfinished now rested in shapes the eye could know. Lina and Theo leaned closer together. The cool air of the corridor held steady around their shoulders. The 4 seed pod weights kept the corners flat. Nothing curled. The paper felt firmer under Lina's palm, warm where the light lived and cool at the edges where her fingers rested. They watched the coastline settle. First came the baker's side street, drawn as a narrow inlet that followed the same quiet way they had walked for years when the morning loaves were still warm and the shutters half open. Next the long path past the orchard wall appeared, the stones that held the day's mild heat, the low branches that dipped in autumn, the place where they always paused to listen for falling fruit. Then the gentle slope down to the little bridge took shape, the wooden rails worn smooth by many quiet hands, the slow water underneath, the 2 steps they always took more carefully when the boards were damp. These were the routes they already knew. The map had been tracing their ordinary walks, gathering the turns and pauses of their shared days into coastlines no original cartographer had ever marked. The half-finished sheet had finished itself by remembering them. Every bend matched a morning or an evening they had spent side by side without thinking to write it down. Theo watched his paper boat on the shallow tray. It turned once, slow and sure, as if agreeing with what the map now showed. The water held it without a ripple. He touched the edge of the tray with one finger and felt the cool of it travel up his hand. Around them the seed pods waited among the hanging vines. Then came the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air, a soft reply that needed no words. The sound passed and left the corridor quieter than before. Lina smoothed the mended edge once more with her thumb. The faint green smell of the moss had faded into the paper itself. Theo folded his hands loosely in his lap and sat a little farther back so the whole atlas lay open between them. The warm light settled into a steady, low glow. All the paths lay open and known. The greenhouse beyond the framed window breathed its slow evening breath. Distant town lights still glowed faint and far below, scattered like coins on dark cloth. They sat with the finished atlas between them, understanding complete, only the soft leave-taking still ahead. Lina reached for the nearest corner of the atlas and began to roll it inward with both palms. The paper felt warm still, as if the low glow had soaked into its fibers. Theo guided the far edge so the paths would not crease, his fingers moving in the same unhurried rhythm. The moss stitches held firm and soft beneath the turning layers. When the sheet became a neat cylinder, she drew a pale length of dried vine from the ledge and bound it once, gently, so the roll would keep its shape. Together they carried it back through the framed window into the wider greenhouse. Seed pods drifted near their shoulders as they walked. On a low shelf among the trays sat a shallow wooden box already holding 2 older maps left by earlier hands. Lina set their finished atlas among them, tucking the vine-tied roll so that a few pods could rest against its side. The paper settled there without sound, ready for whoever might come next to open or to mend. They crossed the short distance to a wooden bench that waited beneath one of the higher panes. The wood was smooth from years of quiet use and cool against the backs of their legs as they Saturday. Lina's hands lay empty now, open on her knees. Theo's last paper boat remained on the shallow tray, its folds drying soft and pale in the still water. Around them the air thickened with the scent of evening earth, rich and kind, rising from the damp soil in the pots and the mossy ledges. Beyond the sill the corridor of cool air held a moment longer. Then the framed window closed of its own accord. The panes met with a sound no louder than a single breath, and the hanging vines and the resting coolness became only memory kept between the glass. Far below, the distant town lights blurred softer, their scattered coins melting into a gentle haze above the sleeping roofs. Theo leaned his shoulder lightly to the bench's back. Lina watched the seed pods float in the dimming light. They turned once, slow as thought. Then came the faint dry rustle of seed pods turning in still air, soft as a page settling closed. The sound passed and left the attic quieter than before. The warm light from the map had faded entirely, leaving only the ordinary evening glow that pools through glass above a town at rest. They sat without speaking. The scent of evening earth deepened and grew gentle. Their breath slowed to match the greenhouse's own long breathing. Everything had found its place, the atlas among the pods, the known routes kept safe, the corridor closed and calm. Lina closed her eyes first. Theo followed a moment later. The quiet light held them both while the greenhouse breathed them, soft and steady, toward sleep. Everything settled at last. They rested in the quiet light as the greenhouse breathed them gently into sleep.